Okay, we'll call the meeting to order, please. Can I have a mover or seconder for that? Deputy Mayor Coughlin. Councillor Wandema Chapman, that the regular meeting of Council of the Township of Springwater of October 16, 2019 come to order at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. Please join us in rising for the national anthem led by Deputy Mayor Coughlin. Thank you.
I have to ask you for your apologies. I have a little bit of a hockey mom voice this evening, so thank you. Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love, in all our sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you, Council. Do we have anybody with a pecuniary interest this evening? Okay, that's good. Before we start things, Councillor Hanna would like to make an announcement. Councillor Hanna?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to let the residents at home and staff know, and the Mayor and Councillor Moore know, that there was a meeting today with the Midhurst developers that I'd sort of been asking for, and I failed to show up at it. It's not an old-timers issue that I have. I have a number of issues going on. My kitchen's being renovated. The darn pipe is leaking, can't shut the water off. My wife's car broke down at lunchtime with people in it, and I had to go and get her to the garage. So I totally gapped on it, so I apologize, and if they want to fire me, please do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hanna. We kind of wondered where you were at, so that explains it. Thank you. Okay, we're moving into the public meeting session, planning matters. Can I have a mover and a seconder to call that to order? Councillor Cabral, Deputy Mayor Coughlin, that the public meeting of council held under Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, P13, as amended for the zoning bylaw amendment application ZB 219-010 by Justin Jr. be called to order 8:32 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. Welcome to this public meeting of Springwater Township Council held in compliance with Section 34 of the Planning Act to give the public an opportunity to express their views in regard to a proposed amendment to the Township of Springwater zoning bylaw 5000 as amended. The first part of this meeting is to present the amendments. Following that, an opportunity will be given to enable those who have any comments, concerns, or inquiries with regard to these proposals to make their views known to Council. In addition to any comments made at this meeting, written presentations would also be welcomed by Council. If a person or public body who files an appeal of a decision of the Township of Springwater in respect of a proposed zoning bylaw amendment does not make an oral submission at the public meeting or written submissions to the Township of Springwater before the proposed zoning bylaw amendments are passed, the local planning appeal tribunal may dismiss all or part of the appeal. Any persons who wish to speak should first give their name and address. All comments or questions should be addressed through the chair, myself. Oral submissions will form part of the public meeting minutes record, including the name and address of the speaker, as information collected under the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. The minutes of the meeting will be posted on the township's website. So first we're dealing with ZB 219-010 by Justin Jr. At 2350 Gill Road. I will now call upon the clerk to confirm the notice of this meeting and the dates on which that notice was given.
Notice of this public meeting was mailed on the 23rd day of September 2019 to the owner of the subject lands and to the assessed owners of 16 properties in the Township of Springwater within 240 meters of the area to which the proposed amendment would apply. and to all persons and public bodies as prescribed under the Planning Act and its regulations. Notice was also posted at the assessed property to which the proposed amendment applies, at a location that was visible from Gill Road. The notice was also placed on the township's website.
Has the planning department received any correspondence in response to this notice of public meeting?
Correspondence was received from the Alderville First Nation, as well as the CAO of the Township of Springwater. Details of the correspondence can be found in the agenda package.
Thank you. I now call upon Ms. Deborah Ann Lisk, Township Planner, to give a brief explanation of the purpose and effect of this proposal.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Application ZB 2019-010 is an application to amend the zoning of 2350 Gill Road to permit an accessory living accommodation in a detached structure, a pool house on the property. Through discussions with the applicant, it was determined that the pool would be built in the near future, and the accessory living accommodation is for the applicant's family members. The unit will be serviced privately, which is consistent with the existing dwelling on the property. Staff have reviewed all applicable policies and have provided a recommendation report on council's agenda recommending approval of the application subject to any comments that are received tonight at the public meeting. That concludes all my comments on the application. Thank you.
Thank you. I now call upon any members of the public wishing to ask questions or make comments regarding this application. Please come to the microphone at the front, state your name and address, and please come forward and do so if you so wish. Doesn't appear like anybody is coming forward. Do any members of council have any questions or comments regarding this application? Councillor Cabral.
Thank you. Just wanted to know, thank you, Mayor Allen. Wanted to know here, it's for dual purpose. Do they have a pool there? Because there's nothing on here that shows a pool or a structure or anything. So I'm kind of amiss as far as how this is laid out.
Planner Lisk.
Through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Cabral, the applicant is planning to build the pool in the near future.
Follow-up?
Yes. So both uses are permitted, a pool house, but this would be a combined unit. Pool house and above it, I guess, a loft of some type would be like a residential suite, would it?
Through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Cabral. It's a detached accessory building, which is permitted. I think through the discussions with the applicant, it's going to be a kind of change room multi-use, which would be permitted if the zoning is approved tonight.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you for attending the public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and showing your interest in the matter. Can I have a mover and a seconder to adjourn the public meeting? Councillor Cabral, Deputy Mayor Coughlin, all those in favor? All those in favor? Carried. Mover and a seconder for direction following the public meeting. Councillor Moore and Councillor Ma Chapman. That council, having held a public meeting in accordance with Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 P13, as amended on zoning bylaw amendment application ZB 219-010 by Justin Jr., having noted correspondence and input received, direct that the application be approved and that the appropriate documents be submitted to council for considerations. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, next we have item 6, deputations, presentations. I'll now call on Natalie Baker of the Ontario Clean Water Agency for a review of our wastewater operations. Welcome to you and to your other colleagues.
Yes, I will introduce them as well. So good evening, Your Worship, councillors, and township staff. I thought I was loud enough. Good evening, Your Worship, councillors, and township staff. For those of you who do not know me, or I guess those of you who did not find me memorable during my last council presentation, I'm Natalie Baker with the Ontario Clean Water Agency. Today we also have Karen Laurenti, who is our regional manager for the Georgian Highlands region, and Richard Eagle, who is your senior operations manager. So lucky for me, they're here, and we're going to direct all your tough questions to them tonight. So today I'm going to talk about the Ontario Clean Water Agency, and I'm going to present Aqua as an agency with regards to who we are and our operations around the province. I will also speak about Aqua's relationship with the Township of Springwater and the operations and maintenance of your water and wastewater systems in 2018 as well as moving into 2019. I was already mixed up here. So Aqua really offers the best of both worlds. As a public agency operating for the public good with you and your residents as shareholders, and yet efficiently as a private company that doesn't receive any operating support from the province. Aqua is efficient with a depth of resources to secure available, safe, reliant, and efficient operations. We have a depth of staffing resources with essential services agreements to ensure continuous service delivery. So if there was ever a strike situation, your facilities would not be affected. We operate for 180 neighboring municipalities, just like the Township of Springwater, with the mandate to protect human health and the environment. We currently service more than 75% of the existing outsourced market, and our clients are made up of municipalities, First Nations, industries, and institutions. Aqua has approximately 800 employees, providing a full range of technical and advisory services. The scale and scope of our operations is expansive. We operate the world's largest municipal biosolids incineration complex and some of the smallest communal systems in remote Ontario. For example, First Nations operation at Moose Factory on James Bay. Our goal is to assist our clients in managing their water and wastewater facilities and associated distribution and collection systems at every stage of the asset life cycle to help them ensure the sustainability of water and wastewater systems into the future. As mentioned, operations and maintenance is our core business, but we also offer our clients a broad array of related services such as financing, planning, engineering, construction, training, technical and advisory services like process optimization, energy management, and asset management. Aqua takes a shared services approach to operations, which allows us to find economies of scale and cost savings for our clients. This approach allows us to purchase bulk supplies and equipment province-wide, which produces savings that municipalities usually wouldn't see. So an example of this is our ability to purchase property insurance across the entire province, which gives us a lower cost for property that municipalities wouldn't be able to obtain on their own. We use a hub and spoke model to deliver services where larger operation contracts anchor the hub and shared services are deployed to the spokes. This structure reflects our commitment to meeting the needs of our clients by facilitating the efficient sharing of management, administration, and operational systems to benefit our clients. So other surrounding clients that would be involved in the shared services approach for the Township of Springwater would be the Township of Adjala-Tosserantio, the Township of Essa, and the Township of Wasaga Beach. Those are just a couple of the municipal systems. And then we also work with a lot of smaller systems like ski clubs and Infrastructure Ontario for smaller systems around the area as well. And our regional office for the Georgian Highlands region is actually located right in the Township of Springwater in Midhurst, with 7 of our Aqua employees living right in your communities. So Aqua has managed your assets through various multi-year contracts, and Aqua has been operating your water facilities since 2003. Further to that, Aqua has been operating the Elmville wastewater treatment facility since the MOE days, dating back to the 70s. Our current contract began in 2014 and expires this year, December 31st, 2019. Aqua strives for the highest level of regulatory compliance, always aiming to receive 100% in your facilities. In 2018, Aqua received a 100% inspection rating at all 9 of your water treatment facilities. Aqua also received a successful DWQMS audit with no non-conformances. So under the current contract between Aqua and the Township, we operate and maintain 9 water systems, which include Minising, Anton Mills, Elmville, Hillsdale, Deltrend, Vesper Downs, Midhurst, Snow Valley, and Phelpston, and 3 wastewater facilities, well actually 4 now, with Stone Manor, Elmville, Snow Valley Highlands, and Royal Oaks, as well as Stone Manor, which I believe will be transferring ownership today in your council agenda. So if you ever wanted to know all the details about Aqua does, you can pick up that nice long contract and give it a read. But just some of the typical operations includes daily rounds, review of trending and residuals, distribution checks, chlorine residuals, monitoring of flows, chemicals used, water quality, sampling and lab testing, routine maintenance and major maintenance, compliance management and regulatory reporting, hydrant flushing and valve exercising, as well as to responding to any community complaints that may come in. So Aqua is working smarter through technology to ensure your operations are safe, compliant, and efficient. Aqua's computerized work management system has allowed your operations team to tag and keep an inventory of all essential equipment in each of your facilities. Each piece of tagged equipment has a unique barcode and ID number. The system schedules monthly, quarterly, and annual maintenance based on owner's manuals and best practices for that individual piece of equipment. The system also records and tracks repairs, as well as weekly checks for each piece of equipment, and schedules compliance procedures and inspections and sampling. So the table within this slide represents all the work orders generated by Aqua's CMMS system in 2018. So a total of 2,337 work orders. 2,219 were all preventative maintenance to prolong the life of that piece of equipment. 3 were emergency work orders, meaning a piece of equipment failed unexpectedly and the operator took it upon themselves to create a work order and fix that piece of equipment. 62 were corrective and 53 were capital projects. So every year, the township is provided with a major maintenance and capital expenditure list for a rolling 6 years. So this is actually in addition to the 20-year long-term capital plan that was also created by Aqua in 2017. So this list requires pre-approval, obviously, from council, and we work with township staff to prioritize to meet the needs financially, as well as maintaining compliance. So on behalf of the township, Aqua managed $1.3 million in capital work in 2018. And this slide here shows some of those items that were included in that, such as inlet corrosion abatement, the Elmville wastewater concrete repairs, Elmville wastewater aeration turbo blower, which I touch on in the energy section, the Snow Valley Highlands SCADA upgrades, Del Trent generator repairs, and hydrant flow testing. I won't read all of those off the screen for you. In 2019, Aqua's been working on various capital projects, and so far Aqua has completed just over $226,000 in capital work. This slide here shows some of the items that were included in that. So just a couple: the Royal Oaks wastewater treatment pump refurbishments, Elmville unit heater replacements, and Elmville clarifier inspection and repairs. So there are quite a few, and I won't take up too much of your time by reading through all of them. Oh, it's bigger than I expected to be up there. So energy conservation is becoming more and more important as hydro rates continue to increase. The Independent Electricity System Operator, also known as the IESO, has made funding available to municipalities through energy conservation programs. Aqua has an agreement with the IESO that allows us to facilitate the grant funding on behalf of our clients, which means we do not have to go through the utilities to get the incentives paid out to our clients. So Aqua has implemented a large number of projects across the province and has found $1.2 million in annual savings on behalf of our clients as a whole. In 2018, Aqua completed the capital upgrades to the Elmville wastewater treatment facility with one high-efficiency 100 horsepower turbo blower. The upgrade has produced an annual energy savings of 231,000 kilowatt hours, which actually means $34,680 every year. Energy incentives for Aqua's Pay for Performance program have already been issued to the township that totaled $23,120. So this will give the project a payback period of 8 years. Aqua has 5 emergency response teams across the province. Each emergency response team is equipped with a large trailer with spare parts and emergency generators. The township falls within, as I mentioned before, the Georgian Highlands region, and we do have one of the OHRT teams located right in Wasaga Beach, if ever needed for the township. So we have one trailer that's used for water emergencies, as well as one 85 kVA emergency generator that has the capability of powering small water facilities and pumping stations if there was ever the need. We've assisted many clients through many different emergency events, including major flooding that we've seen in 2017 and 18, ice storms, the 2003 province-wide blackout, and Aqua also played a critical role in the rehabilitation in the Walkerton water supply in 2000. Our community partnership framework reflects the way we feel about our role in supporting local communities and the environment. There's really 2 main programs that really truly reflect this framework, the One Water program and the I Don't Flush campaign, which I'm going to speak about in the next 2 slides. And in addition to that, Aqua has also been involved in local sponsorships, such as donations to the shared facility project at the Elmville District School, High School, the Elmville Santa Claus Parade, and the annual golf tournament that's held by the mayor. So to talk a little bit about the I Don't Flush campaign, it's to support local communities as mentioned above, and Aqua has partnered with the Clean Water Foundation on the I Don't Flush awareness campaign, which encourages the public to properly dispose of household items rather than to flush them down the toilet. So this campaign has reached hundreds of thousands of individuals in Ontario and gets the word out on proper disposal of non-flushables. So even if it says flushables on the side, they are not flushables, as well as pharmaceuticals and fats, oils, and grease. And we really just want to help to shift the behavior and create a real change in our communities that really affects the wastewater treatment facilities. So as mentioned, the first campaign spotlighted proper disposal of unused pharmaceuticals. The second was hygiene products going down the drain. And the third was the fog, which is the fat, oils, and grease. And I think, are you able to do it from there? We can play one of the videos that was put out for this program.
There's no excuse for what I've done to you. I've dumped a lot of garbage on you, and you deserve better. I need to clean up my act. Start treating you right. Will you forgive me? Dumping these items down your toilet or drains is bad news. It can damage the environment, clog pipes and sewers, and lead to flooding and costly repairs. Let's talk later. Visit idon'tflush.ca and join the I Don't Flush movement.
So there's quite a few other videos. So if you find them really interesting, you can do that in your spare time. So moving on from that, and we're actually, just today we launched the 4th campaign, which is really wrapping up the I Don't Flush campaign as a whole, and it's focusing on all 3 campaigns and wrapping it up into one. So there should be some other videos that will be coming out in the next couple days. So that next project, I guess, that I wanted to talk about was Aqua's One Water education program that puts operators into grade 8 classrooms in client communities to show the importance of clean and safe drinking water and to teach kids about their local water and wastewater systems. We find that when the kids learn it and they bring it home to their parents, it seems to make a large difference in our communities. The One Water program was born in 2014 out of the desire to strengthen and formalize our commitment to water literacy. We worked with a team of educators and Aqua operators to develop materials for grade 8 students, where teachers were already focusing on water issues as part of the science curriculum. So once they get that point in their curriculum, we'll come in and do it's about a half-day session on the One Water program. So new schools continue to sign up, and the program has now seen more than 1,500 students go through it since that time. And this program is actually only available to Aqua client communities. The One Water administrators will be reaching out to the local elementary schools in the township of Springwater, as we're hoping to launch this program in the 2019-2020 school year. I've personally been involved in this program, and it's really great to see the kids excited about water and water systems and where their water comes from. Most of them have absolutely no idea when they turn on the tap where that's actually coming from. So in closing, Aqua is a full cost recovery agency that provides a full range of water and wastewater services. We strive for the best in class compliance and safety record and have over 600 certified operators. We value the partnership we've built here with the Township of Springwater, and we look forward to working with you in the future. If you have any hard questions, now is the time that we will direct them to Karen and Rich.
Thank you, Natalie. A very thorough update. Thank you very much. We very much value the professional and responsive relationship we have had over the years with Aqua. Any questions? Yes, Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mayor Allen, and thank you for coming tonight. Beautiful presentation. Nice to see we're in good hands. What's the price tag on this that we're paying a year?
Currently, through your mayor, currently we're sitting at about 1.2 million.
And what will that be for the 2020 budget?
Through your mayor, we are currently discussing that with staff, and I believe that will be, we're still in the negotiations period, but that should be coming to council, I would assume, in the next couple council meetings.
Other questions, comments? Okay, can I have a mover and a seconder to receive Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Ritchie, that the delegation from Natalie Baker on behalf of the Aqua regarding the review of wastewater operations be received? All those in favor? Carried. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, 6.2, we have a delegation from Ms. Judith Skelton, Grant of the Federation of Tiny Township Shoreline Association. Welcome.
Do I have to do anything to make this work?
No, just sit down and pull it a little bit towards you and speak into the mic, please, because we're being recorded. Thank you. Now, I believe you handed out something, didn't you?
I did. I gave you a copy of what I'm about to read, and I'll give the copy that I'm reading from to the clerk at the end.
Thank you.
So, Your Worship, councillors, members of staff, audience, the northern tip of the township of Springwater has an abundant flow of the world's purest water. You celebrate this water every summer in the Elmvale Water Festival. Hundreds of people stop at the water kiosk north of Elmvale to fill bottles with this extraordinary water every week. People drive from Barrie and from other distant centres to get it. People from all over Ontario fill their bottles en route to their cottages on Georgian Bay. Professor Bill Shotek has been testing this water, some of it ancient, some of it recent, all of it filtered to extraordinary purity by the living layer of sand, gravel, stones, clay, trees, plants, for 30 years, and has documented its extraordinary purity. The artesian flow from 3 pipes in the water kiosk is part of the headwaters of the Alliston Aquifer complex that flows almost to Toronto. It actually flows out under a clay layer under Lake Simcoe, turns and heads towards Toronto. Shotek and Professor John Cherry, writer of the standard textbook on groundwater, are beginning to map this aquifer complex this fall. But theirs is a long-term, very costly project involving the sinking of many wells over many years. They have a 5-year grant of $30,000 a year to make a start, and they plan on applying for a much larger grant to get the job completed. They have appealed to the community in in Springwater, Tay, and Tiny Townships to get involved by housing researchers, allowing wells to be drilled on their properties, supporting their applications to government granting authorities, and raising money for costs. We are afraid that there will be no point in mapping the aquifer if it is wrecked by aggregate extraction in the next couple of years. So FOTSA, the Federation of Tiny Township Shoreline Associations, has become a party in the LPAT, the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, hearing into the application by CRH Canada Group, owner of Dufferin Aggregates. They're the guys that are fixing Highway 400 at the moment, for an extension of the Teton Pit northward into French's Hill in the first concession of Tiny Township. Our members live along the shores of Tiny Township, miles away from the Teton Pit, which is on the far eastern edge of the southmost concession of Tiny. Indeed, the road where trucks enter or exit loaded with gravel borders Tiny and Tay townships. So half that road is in Tiny and half of it is in Tay. Some of our members may fill their bottles en route to their cottages, but none of us have wells that draw on that aquifer. We got involved because we care about the environment, and we feel that the purest water in the world is worth fighting for. It looks like the battle is going to cost us more than $100,000. And that is to cover the cost of witnesses and the expenses of our pro bono lawyers. Without the support of the Canadian Environmental Law Association, CELA, our costs would rise to at least $150,000. You recall the worldwide protest of the young a week or two ago, and the address to the United Nations by a young Swedish girl, all decrying the inaction of their parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents to deal with destructive climate change. They might equally have decried our failure to protect the planet's drinking water. Already there are worrisome signs that aggregate extraction is impacting groundwater. Wells along Highway 93 and along Marshall Road in Tiny Township have become silty whenever gravel is washed in the Teton Pit. And this past January, there was silt in the water of the water kiosk in your township. This is an opportunity for you to help us protect the source of the extraordinarily pure water around Elmvale and points south in Springwater and en route to Toronto. I and FOTSA appeal to you to invest in our effort to halt the removal of the filtration layer that produces your extraordinary water. Bill Shotek believes that it is imperative that there be a moratorium on the aggregate extraction in the Waverley Uplands. Getting the extension of the Teton Pit stopped is a start. We of FOTSA ask that you make a substantial contribution towards our legal costs as we go to bat for the world's purest water, water that you celebrate and use.
Thank you very much. I open it up to council to comment, ask questions. Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Judith and I did have a meeting, and she discussed much of this with me. I was also fortunate enough last springtime to have the opportunity to visit with Professor Shotek there at his farm where he's monitoring the water. And I thought the water was clean, but after listening to his story, and I might also add, I think at one point in time I suggested to council they might like to take it upon themselves to also make a visit there. He's more than receptive to show you around. But it was pretty extraordinary, and his fear is that more people will want to be starting to drink it. But I think our fear now might be that some of the people that are drawing water from that aquifer are going to be impacted by it because there is silt happening in some of the wells. I wasn't aware that there was silt coming out of the kiosk, however, but I do appreciate you bringing
It
that
only
to our
happened in
attention.
1 month, and we don't know why it did,
Yes.
but it did.
So I thank you for your presentation, that's for sure. Thank you, Judith.
Deputy Mayor Coghlan?
Thank you, Marilyn, and through you, thank you, Judith, for making your way down to Springwater this evening. I too have attended meetings held by Aware Simcoe and through that with Mr. Shattuck, Mr. Cherry, and Kate Harries, and what they're doing is absolutely fascinating. And the way that they've excited geologists and scientists from all over Canada and the world to come to Springwater or Simcoe County to be involved in this is something that I think our council would love the opportunity to embrace. And I think that with your information this evening and that brought forward by Councillor Cabral, I think it would be advantageous of our council to reach out to Mr. Shattuck, Mr. Cherry, and Kate Harries and ask them to come to this council and express to us the work that they're doing, because they are presenting this in local meetings, and their presentations are valuable and very informative and very exciting. And I think that bringing it to this council, it may give us a better understanding of how we can help and how we can, like you said, they've received the grant for the 30,000 over 5, but we do.
There is a group that has been set up, which
Yes.
meets, which is based in Elmvale.
Yeah.
And I know that there are things that the community can do. When they go to granting agencies, they have to present a sense that the community is behind this work. And there are various ways to do that, which Shotik will explain to you.
And Judith, I do appreciate that, and I think that an invitation from the municipality and this council to those involved to come to us and present that to us and show us how we can be involved, and that is only going to further the work that they're doing.
I think that's a long-term one, where you're going to need to do it over, actually, I think, set some budget for it over a fairly long period of time, and you'll just have to think about how to do that. What we're looking at is a hearing that's going to happen either at the end of next year or the beginning of the year following. So end of 2020, beginning of 2021, and we're facing this huge legal bill.
And I appreciate that, Judith, and through the mayor respectively. If I can continue the discourse, I did see that in your delegation request online that there was a monetary request involved. And the question I have is, understanding that this is, well, it's an issue that surrounds us all, the municipality of Tiny or Tay, how have they been supportive to this initiative?
So far, what Tay has done is to write a letter of support for the position that the Township of Tiny took in opposing or in failing to act to allow the expansion of the Teton Pit north into French's Hill. They failed to make the change to their official plan and their bylaw. So in the end, the pit took them to court. And that's why they're before the LPAT. The reason we got involved was that although they've gone to bat for all sorts of things which were important to our citizens, traffic on the exit road is appalling. And the size of those trucks that come out onto a narrow 2-lane road with no shoulders and that has school buses on it and people walking on it. I mean, it's just appalling. But I felt that that was the job of the Tiny Township Council to come to grips with that sort of problem, and also with First Nations presence on that land and rare and endangered species on it. All of those things are things that Tiny has tackled, but it did not tackle the impact of that aggregate extraction on the water. And so we got involved because of that.
And I thank you for that, and I think that prior to our council making any decision moving forward with your organization, I think it's important to us to understand the decisions and methods used by our neighboring municipalities to make the decisions that they did. And if it's a notice of motion or just an item for future consideration later this evening, just to even have our staff communicate to us why Tiny and Tay are holding the positions that they do, and how we can support them in those, and also how we can move forward with Mr. Shoddock, Mr. Cherry, and Ms. Harries with the programs that they have. So thank you very much for the time that you've been here tonight.
I have asked to make a delegation to the Township of Tay, and their clerk is currently on medical leave. So we'll see what happens there. I have the support of people who live in Tay, and I will make the same pitch to them as I have made to you, which is we need financial support. And eventually I will speak to Tiny Township, but I think Tiny came to its decision about the range of problems it was going to tackle through a number of consultants. And so they came in with recommendations of a particular sort, which didn't include the water.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Can I have a mover and a seconder, please, then to receive that? Councillor Moore and Councillor Maud Chapman. That the delegation from Judith Skelton Grant on behalf of the Federation of Tiny Township Shoreline Association regarding CRH Canada Group's proposed extension of the Teton Pit Tiny Township be received. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you again for coming. Next, we move to question period. And members of the public are invited to ask questions on something on the agenda tonight. Each person has a maximum of up to 2 minutes, please. So anybody wishing to pose a question, come forward, state your name. And as I say, you have 2 minutes, please.
My name's Eric Tubman, and I live in 1584 Floss Road 10 West. I've been a permanent resident for 69 years, so I may not have saw it all, but pretty close. And the background on the road here, it was rebuilt in the mid-1960s, which wasn't really a great job, but it was an improvement over what it was. And the road is being gravel, it's never graded enough. They grade it, and then about 3 days later, it starts going bad again. And they've just put a new coating of gravel on it last week, which to me doesn't make a whole lot of difference because you're going to get the same potholes, you're going to have the same soft shoulders. Nothing's really changed. And the traffic counter you had on this summer, I don't think was representative of the normal traffic because they were putting on the dust control material at the time, and people just don't drive on it at that point. And examples of my vehicle damage there, I've had broken windshields, rattles and suspension damage, and fiberglass truck cap destroyed in 4 years. The more serious occurrences during the potholes and soft shoulders, we've had 2 cars on their roofs. One guy had to leave in an ambulance. Another woman went off the road because the bumps cut off a hydro pole. We'd had several in the ditch through the years. And from the previous examples, you can see why we need a new good paved road. There was money in the budget. I was wondering where it went and why, and when we can expect some money in the new budget to actually repair the road. And we have waited patiently for years, and it's about time we see something done. Not later, now. We've been waiting forever.
Okay, thank you
Okay.
very much. We're going to, this will be probably included in a discussion we have about regarding a report later on tonight. So we'll be discussing this further at that point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Good evening,
Good evening.
Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Councilors. My name is Doug Ritchie. I reside 1294 Floss Road 10 West. Also own a property on 1345 Floss Road 10 West. Floss Road 10 West has been neglected too long. Repair patching the inadequacy of the road and with additional gravel from time to time is not kept up with the standards of municipal roads in this township. Spring thaws, wells, rains, and then this road make it a challenge every year for the maintainers, the graders, to keep this road in proper conditions. This past year was no exception. Potholes that measure usually 6 to 8 inches this year measured up to 2 feet, up to 6 inches in depth, as you saw pictures from Mr. Spring as he presented it last spring. Unnecessary repairs on, to vehicles and other equipment as a result of this. We wouldn't expect any other road to be like this in this township. We hope you wouldn't either. The cost to maintain this road needs to be fully examined. Continually adding gravel to the patch of the problem is no solution. Either is attempt to grade out potholes that continually appear with traffic as we experience on Floss Road 10 West. The cost of grading the road 10 to 12 times a year, dust suppression multiple times a year, is no match for what the road has experienced. Previous meeting I attended, Mr. Mayor asked the Director of Roads what would it cost to pave the road, and that cost was over $500,000, they said. What question was not asked is, what is the cost of maintaining this road for the next 10 to 15 years, depreciated with the cost and the annual inflation rate? What would Springwater save by paving this road and maintaining it properly? I realize there are cost restraints from year to year, but no one has to say you have to repair this road or pave this road all in one shot. You have 1 mile at a time where budget allows. Springwater had a 6-year strategic plan where Floss Road 10 West was supposed to be paved this year. It was removed. We discovered those funds were reallocated elsewhere in the township. Who made that decision? Where did the funds were redirected? And will those funds ever be redirected back? We as residents and people that using this road deserve an answer, and we hope that Floss Road 10 West will be properly and repaired and maintained for previous years. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to Mr. Spring, come forward.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I would like to comment on section 11.5 of the agenda of the Springwater Council tonight. I see that Springwater Township received from the federal government new money with conditions to spend it on projects that meet their criteria. I would like to point out the list that has been put before you does not include upgrades to Floss Road 10 West, which meets the federal government's criteria. After all the evidence that has been given to you, your staff still has not acted on the acute problems with the road and its lack of pavement. I am not sure if the situation is still not fully understood in regards to the road conditions and the safety hazards that exist because of these poor conditions. Public consultation would help to clear up any confusion surrounding the conditions and the state of this road. A motion was brought forward by Councillor Ritchie and seconded by Councillor Cabral to have these consultations with the agricultural community. This has not happened yet, but recommendations were still brought forward by the staff as seen in tonight's agenda. What is the reasoning for this, as it seems to me that the cart is being put before the horse? I look at the list of recommended new projects and see many that can wait. One in particular really stands out to me, and that is the paving of the area around the new fuel tanks at Yard 1. Can township staff not fuel their machines on gravel? After all, I have done it all my life and never have found it to be an adversity or a safety hazard. There are some roads on it that are slated for upgrading from existing hardtop to new pavement. I have driven these roads spring, summer, fall, and winter many times, and I dare say that they do not need upgrading at this point. The Floss Road 10 project was not a new one, but one that was canceled. This project cannot be forgotten, even though it appears to be. The residents have been patient up to now, but now we are demanding action from our council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spring. So again, for all of those who made comments, we'll be reviewing that report coming up as one of the action item reports.
I'm sorry, would you say that again?
I say all of the comments, questions we received, we'll be discussing further at the action item report when it comes up shortly.
Thank you.
Moving on to 8.1, minutes of boards and committees and organizations. Can I have a mover and a seconder to approve these minutes? Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Cabral. Anybody wish to discuss any of those 3 minutes? Okay, the minutes are the special minutes of the special meeting of council September 23rd, 2019, the special meeting on October 2nd, 2019, and the regular meeting of council on October 2nd, 2019. All those in favor? Carried. 8.2 is minutes of the boards, committees, and organizations. Can I have a mover and a seconder to get that? Councillor Cabral, Deputy Mayor Coughlin. That the minutes of the boards, committees, and other organizations listed herein be received as information. Any question or discussion about this one? It's the Heritage Advisory Committee minutes of August 27, 2019. All those in favor? Carried. Can I have a mover and a second to receive the correspondence items? Please get it on the table. Councillor Moore, Councillor Maude Chapman. And we have 3 things, or 2 things. Any questions or discussions about either of these? Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Sorry, thank you, Marilyn. It's more of just a comment. I think that our council would like to reiterate to staff and our Heritage and Cultural Committee who were involved in creating that event for us. And I know we've said it once before at this table, but it was an absolutely incredible event put on, and I think that it highlighted who Springwater was and where we're going. And I just wanted to thank all the volunteers and community members and staff who were involved in creating that event for us. So thank you again.
Thank you. Okay, the motion is then to accept the correspondence information items listed herein be received as information. That's the Committee of Adjustment minutes of August 28, 2019, and the Cultural Activities Advisory Committee Doors Open Springwater 25th Anniversary. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, next we have action item option report. Can I have a mover and a seconder to get that? Councillor Moore and Councillor Maude Chapman. That the report from the junior planner regarding CI 219-001 Clayton dated October 16, 2019 be received, and that council, having considered the application presented, the requirements of the community improvement plan and total funding request be directed as follows. And there are either options. Any comments with respect to this from council? So do I take from that we are looking at option A, Councillor Ritchie? So we're looking at option A. Any discussion with respect to that? Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Marilyn. I'm just looking here at the report there. The community improvement plan is for the facades. Does that include structural deficiencies that need to be repaired? That's kind of my only question on this one here. I know that Advantage Homes, they put up a new sign and stuff, but the circles I see here are more like structural defects than they are to fix up and put up a new sign. So that's my question. Thanks.
Director Coleman, can you, Director Spagno?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through you to Councillor Cabral. The facade improvements include the structural components of the building to keep the downtown core looking new and fresh, and to make sure that from a safety perspective there isn't any issues with anything structurally along the main street. So it does cover that aspect.
Okay, so we're talking about option A on this. All those in favor? Carried. Next, we move to 11.1 action reports. Now, we know for sure that 11.4 is going to get pulled and discussed. Can I have a mover and a second to get these on the tables, please? Councillor Maude Chapman and Deputy Mayor Coughlin. Are there any others that we'd like to comment on or pull? Councillor Cabral?
Sorry, Mayor Allen, you indicated 11.4. I'd like
Actually,
to pull
11.5,
11.5.
yes. It's
Thank you.
11.5. There was a bit of a numbering.
No problem.
Councillor Hanna?
I have a question on 11.4, please.
That's the 11, investing in Canada infrastructure?
That's correct.
Any others? Okay, Councillor Hannah, the 11-4 question.
Thank you. It just appears to me, and just a question through the chair to our staff, that 11.4, and I don't disagree with the motion to ask for the funds for the possibility that we're going to build a nice new recreational complex. My question is, if that doesn't go forward, should we be asking for a second option? And my second suggestion would be, if you agree that we should be, maybe trails should be considered as another component to this request.
CAO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Hannah. So my understanding, Councillor Hannah, is that we can only request funding for one project, not multiple projects. So if it was trails related to that property, if you will, or that project, then maybe we can put that in there. But typically, it's an application based on a specific project. So.
Thank you, and I wasn't trying to take away from it, as I said, but I just thought if that one doesn't go forward, then we get nothing. So that was my thinking.
Thank you. Councillor Cabral?
Yes, my apologies, Mayor Allen. I did want to I had some questions about 11.3.
11.3, request for land purchase of unopened road allowance.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I don't know exactly who this should go to, but I guess my concern here is down the road, future development could always be possible. I know that that particular stretch of road off of Baldwick Lane that goes to, I would have to say, westerly from that location, I believe that Public Works plows that, and that is part of the road allowance as well. And the green part is the part I suspect that they're looking to purchase. And my concern is that the road allowance continues from that green part onward. And I'm wondering if we're not going to put ourselves in a situation where down the road, we're not going to have the ability to travel that road. You obviously know the answer.
Clerk Chaparral?
Thank you, through you. The part of the road allowance that's on the east of the, to the east of the rail bed, actually, part of the hydro buildings have been constructed on there in years past, so it's something I will be dealing with in the future. So that road allowance, actually, there's not much road allowance there. It's been built over by part of the hydro station.
So on the other side of
the rail
train.
bed.
Okay, that was my concern, because I know, I think Craig Road presented some issues because we sold that, and then it would have been nice to have it back again. All right, thank you.
Okay, all right, so we have a mover and a seconder that actually report items 11.2 through to 11.10 be received, and that recommendations contained therein be approved as presented. 11.2, the 2020 council meeting schedule. 11.3, request for land purchase of unopened road allowance, Haller Road. 11.4, investing in Canada infrastructure program, CCR funding stream application. 11.6, Snow Valley Highlands wastewater treatment plant expansion security reduction. 11.7, Center Vespra wastewater treatment plant phase 1 final acceptance. 11.8, group benefits program renewal. 11.9, County of Simcoe Economic Development Fund A. 11.10, request to sod new ball diamonds at Tree Nursery Sports Park, with the exception of item 11.5 to be dealt with separately. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, 11.5. Now, what I thought we'd do, we get a mover and a seconder to get it on the floor, please. Councillor Ritchie and Councillor Cabral will be pulling forward after we deal with the 11.5, the notice of motion 14.3 by Councillor Ritchie, because it's related. It's closely related, obviously. And before we get into it, Director, or CAO Schmidt, why don't you give us an overview, preamble of the report, the topic, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to members of council. So essentially, the intent or the purpose of tonight's staff report is essentially to try to address the council motion that was provided, I guess, or voted upon at the September 18th council meeting, whereby essentially council directed staff to, or deferred the report back to staff to have further discussions and to essentially consult with the agricultural community. Since then, obviously, at the October 2nd meeting, Councillor Ritchie proposed a notice of motion, which essentially, I'll paraphrase, I guess, is to have something come back to tonight's meeting for further discussion. So the intent is to bring this report back tonight so that council could have further discussion on it. With that said, the recommendation is essentially allowing for council to have some dialogue about this, and the intent is that the projects that are included in this report reflect what was included in the previous report, with the exception of tenders, Part A and B of the one tender, because council did approve that. So that work is actually being done and wasn't actually funded from these additional gas tax dollars. So that work's done. So essentially, the only other project not on this list, I believe, was the driveways, which we indicated at the September 18th meeting that we'd be undertaking and completing without using the additional gas tax funds. So essentially, the projects that you see here tonight are the remaining ones are part of that project. The intent is to have council have discussion and or provide staff with a list of their projects that they would like considered for the additional gas tax funds. So we are hoping to have that list provided to us, and I apologize I didn't put anything in the report on this, but we would like to have that information provided to us by beginning of November if we can, via email submission. What we can do is we can consolidate that list, and we can bring forward all of those projects for discussion through the 2020 capital budget discussion. In addition to that, staff is in the process, and I believe it was confirmed today or yesterday, that the date for the agricultural forum is slated for November 28th. So the intent is that staff would be tabling the budget on the November 20th council meeting, the draft budget, and then we would also be doing a presentation at the agricultural forum to essentially provide more information to the agricultural community on the projects that are being proposed at this stage for the 10-year or the 2020 capital budget. We're looking at having those individuals provide comments back to the township by December 5th. So again, that we can incorporate all of that discussion into a December 9th and or multiple meetings as it relates to the capital budget discussion. So we're not looking for council to approve these projects. With that said, if there's projects on the list right now and council, or some council members or every council member is not supportive of those, then by all means, we would like to know that. But at the same time, we would also like council to provide their projects that they would like considered for the additional gas tax money. Again, with the intent that we'll come back, we'll present all of the different projects, because also we'll need some costing to be prepared. Obviously, if council is proposing some projects, we'll have to determine what those costs are. We can provide all of that back through the 2020 budget process with the intent that council will make a decision as to which projects would be funded from those additional gas tax dollars. So hopefully that's clear. But I'll answer
Thank
questions.
you, CAO. Okay, I'll open the floor to comments. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I asked to bring this back because I had concerns that I felt needed to be addressed. I felt there was members of council like myself that needed to speak. I had a couple concerns. Obviously, we've seen the farmers here tonight. That's a concern. But I like to go back to the election last year when we were driving around and talking to everybody and telling everybody that we were going to get a roof on Phelpston. The farmers were going to get that road fixed. Nothing happened. It went from a 6-year plan to a 10-year plan, and then it got pulled. And I'll let Councillor Cabral deal with that. We were going around telling everybody about you're going to get a roof on Phelpston. When it come budget time last year, I spoke to the Director of Finance. I spoke to you, Mayor Allen. I spoke to our former CEO. I spoke to former Director of Parks and Rec, Mr. Belcourt, I need to bring this forward. Maybe I'm at fault. Nothing happened. The budget's passed, away we go. I thought, what happened to setting some money aside? Nothing ever happened. And I was disappointed with that. We told people something was going to happen, and nothing happened. So with this gas tax, when I seen it coming forward here, I thought this is a perfect time for us to put our input into it. Some of these projects that was mentioned from the Public Works, the sky was going to fall in and we didn't get it fixed. Well, everything's still running normal. So tonight, I'd like to put a notice of motion on the table that we set some money aside to start this roof. So tell me when I should mention that. Now? Okay. Then I'll open the floor up to whoever else wants to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I know that when this came up originally, I had some comments that I made. I was a little bit disillusioned by the process that was followed.
Excuse me, Councillor, when this came up, what is this?
At the previous, this particular item here, when we had it at September the... I'm sorry? No, this exact item that's come before us again.
So you're talking about the previous report that had the different tables on it?
Yes, but this table is the aspect of that, the part that we separated from it. But it's basically the same thing minus Vesper Valley. So anyway, I'm just going back to kind of give everyone a sense of when it came up. I was, to be quite frank, caught off guard. I thought that maybe some of the things that we'd seen prior to, some of the delegations that we had might have factored into it, and they didn't. So I'm of the same mind. I know there's some spots here that are up in my neck of the woods in Ward 1. I've driven those roads. I drove them again just recently. I looked at the parking lot up in Elmvale, and I don't see any real dire need that they need to be done right away. I think a lot of these projects that are currently listed here only came about because we had this second shot of money, second shot of the gas tax funding. So I'm going to be also putting in a motion with respect to where I feel these funds should be going.
Well, thank you, but with respect to that, I'm not sure whether it requires motions. I think we're, CAO Schmidt, can you reiterate the way that you think is best and you would like to receive these indications, not separate individual notices of motion, but indications of interest that would then be factored into the budget process? Can you just go over that again, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to members of council. So the intent is that, again, if councilors want to put motions forward, I won't debate that, but the intent is really, in order to avoid that formal process, if you will, is to have every member of council provide an email to myself, and we can consolidate the list, and then once councilors have provided all of their respective projects to us, we'll start to do the costing, and then we can provide that to members of council in advance so that you can see what projects were actually requested. And then, of course, we will be bringing that full list back to council through the 2020 budget process for council members to make a decision as to which projects they would like ultimately the gas tax dollars to be allocated towards.
There's we have had discussion in the past about electronic signs in some of the communities. So how would something like that fit into what we're talking about here?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So again, the electronic signs, you may recall that we also received around $676,000 for small and rural funding program. So the intent, I believe there was a report in August, I want to say, whereby there was an information report provided to council with some potential options, and I believe the electronic signboards was on that particular staff report. So again, similar to the gas tax, we would be coming back with a report through the budget process to indicate to council, here's some projects that could be utilized, we could utilize the funds for, and or if there's other projects that council wishes to utilize those additional funds for, again, council could make those decisions at that time.
So I guess it's just clarification of which potential projects qualify for potentially which pot of money. So maybe you could clarify that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. So, to be honest with you, and not to call out any member of council, but Councillor Hanna did mention there are a couple of projects that he had mentioned, one being the Midhurst Pavilion parking lot, which again is on the list, and it does qualify for the gas tax funds. There was another request for some, I'll call it noise attenuation, if you will, at the Midhurst Pavilion. That one would probably be a little bit more suited for the small and rural funding program, just because of the nature of the expense. Again, the small and rural funding program was more one-time funds for efficiencies, if you will. So, efficiencies is a little gray, if you will. But the gas tax funds, as I indicated in the report tonight, it's pretty specific about what the criteria has to meet. It is more capital-related works. So, the electronic signs, I guess in someone's mind, yeah, they could be capital-related as well. However, again, the idea was that would improve or provide for efficiencies in our communications to the public and assist our CRAs as well. So I'm swinging it maybe a little bit differently in the sense that may fall under the efficiencies dollars as opposed to the gas tax dollars, because I'm sure that with the conversation tonight and the emails that we'll likely receive, we'll probably have more projects to consider under the gas tax funds than what we potentially have dollars available for, if you will.
Okay. Comments here? Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mary Ellen. I just want clarification on this. Since this has now been tabled and involves the gas tax, are we not permitted to make a motion? As it's already been tabled? And it's already before us.
We're not at the notices of motion section of the
I'm
agenda yet.
not saying notice of motion, I'm just saying motion, as in right now. It's
Clerk
already
Chaperon?
before council, it's been before council before, it's for projects that we were going to either say go ahead or don't go ahead, and I'm of the mind now, it's been dragging on, and I'd like to see something happen for the people that keep coming before us, something they've been waiting about 60 years for, and I would like to put the motion forth right here, right now, and I think that I am able to do so.
Clerk Chaperon, can you reflect on that?
Thank you, through you. At this time, there is a motion on the table, which is what you see under 11.5. So anything would have to be an amendment to this motion. You couldn't table a new motion at this time until this motion would be dealt with. So if you're proposing an amendment to this motion, that would be proper protocol.
Then I'm proposing an amendment.
Okay, well, that's been crafted. Councillor Moore?
Thank you. It's just a question, and I hope it's not toward the clerk, but when we talked about inviting the agricultural community to discuss their concerns, I particularly mentioned the agricultural committee that we both sit on. Did a special invitation go out to those members to this meeting, to be aware of the meeting on the 28th? They had a number of roads that they were concerned about that were not on this list.
I'll turn that over to CAO Schmidt, because
Thank you.
I believe there has been communication.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Moore. It's my understanding, talking to our Director of Planning, that yes, an invitation hasn't gone out yet, but the intent is that an invitation would be going out to that Agricultural Advisory Committee as well.
Councilor Ritchie?
Speaking of roads, this question, while the clerk is doing her work there, to the Director of Public Works. These farmers that were here tonight talking about concession 10, has that road ever had the shoulders cut down on it?
Director Coleman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, through you to Councillor Ritchie. I would have to check with staff and see that, find out the last time that was done. I can send out an email on that.
And what about road ditching? Where are we with the road ditching on concession 7, on concession 10, that same concession road? Has it been done?
Director Coleman?
I would think not, but I can confirm both of those for you.
Okay, Clerk Chaperon is going to read the amended motion.
The following amendment has been proposed by Councillor Cabral and seconded by Councillor Ritchie, and reads that the motion now before council be amended as follows. Replace the second paragraph with the following: that sufficient funds from the one-time additional gas tax funds be directed to Public Works Project 2019-26 for the completion of the gravel conversion to hardtop of Floss Road 10 West from County Road 27 to County Road 22, Crossland Road. And be it resolved that this council directs staff, Finance Department, to set aside $75,000 for 2018 plus $75,000 for 2019, totaling $150,000 to be set aside and to be used towards the construction of a new steel roof covering the Phelpston Rink on or before the 4th year of this term of council.
Okay, discussion with respect to those. Councillor Ma Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I just need clarification. Are we adding these into the gas fund 11.5, or are we voting yes to these or no to these?
My understanding from the motion is, the desire of the motion is to vote on both of these to basically lock it into the, except for the second part of the motion refers to 218, and we're almost 75,000 for 218 year. We're in the 219 year now, so that doesn't work. So if you're talking about, we're almost completed the 219 year, so we're talking about 220 and forward. So I think what you're referring to is 219 and 220? Sorry, 220 and 221?
We have 4 years in the term. We lost last year because it fell on deaf ears. So I'm asking for last year for 218, and I'm asking for the money for this year out of the gas tax that's come before us, this one-time bump.
So, but the effect then is that you're asking for $150,000 in the 220 budget? Because that's the one we're dealing with going forward.
I'm not, excuse me, Mayor Allen, but this has got nothing to do with the budget. We're talking about gas tax money that came to us. This is separately. This is the 530 or 80,000 that we've got. I've got a request in for $150,000 to be set aside.
That, okay, all right. Councillor Hannah?
Thank you. After today, I wouldn't trust my memory much, but I believe in the last budget, we put $75,000 away already for this, but I might be wrong.
CAO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I stand to be corrected here, but project number 2025-16, entitled Phelpston Rink Pavilion of Valinder Park, is in the 10-year capital plan with a price tag or an investment of $400,000 in year 2025. So it is in the 10-year capital plan, it's just not in the 2020 year, if you will.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I have two questions then. First question, the roof of the pavilion, for the pavilion, as $150,000 doesn't seem like enough. So are we planning to fundraise for the balance, or?
I hope to
So
come
that's my-
forward next.
Sorry, that's my first question. And then the second question for Floss Road 10. Did we get a quote at some point for chip and tar for that entire road? I need to sort of understand what the cost is going to be for that. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll take the first part of the question and I'll direct it to Councillor Ritchie with respect to his intentions on that.
I'm spreading this over 4 years. So I got 2018, I got 75 for this year, and next year I'll be coming back for another 75, but I hope to do it either through the budget or through this gas tax, whatever comes forward first. So
Okay.
next year I'll be coming back for another 75, so that on the fourth year or on or before, we'll have the money set aside to put the roof on.
Okay.
That's my objective.
The second part to Director Coleman, please. Do you want that repeated? What that was?
No, thank you, Mayor Allen. I'm just looking for some prices. We didn't actually get a quote on what it would cost to single surface treat Floss 10 West. We do have some pricing for single surface treatment and for microsurface treatment and asphalt that we have received from bids this year, so we can create an estimate for it. But it's never actually gone to tender to get a quote on what it would cost.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Marilyn, and through you. I guess these points are twofold. While I agree, while I agree with Councillor Ritchie that a pavilion over the ice rink in Phelpston would service the community beautifully, I think that it's our job to take a fulsome approach to recreation in Springwater. I think that the community of Phelpston and surrounding are very appreciative of the new pavilion that was just recently built across the road from this pavilion that we're speaking of building. Also the washrooms that were just done in Phelpston. There's been a lot of attention, even things as simple as the new bleachers that we've provided. This community is not forgotten, but we have 7 communities in our municipality, and it's our job to balance this. And while Councillor Ritchie is asking for this to be brought forward from our capital plan, it is in our capital plan for 2020, so we're talking a difference of 1 year. If Councillor Ritchie is asking for this over 4 years, I think that we have an opportunity,
Excuse me, if I just make correct, I believe it was 2025?
Yes.
so it's 1 year. If he's asking for it over 4 years, we're in 2020, so that's one. So my concern is that we're not suggesting that, but I think that considering our first budget delegation is simply 3 meetings away, these are significant projects. These are things that can be part of a fulsome discussion, and I will not support an amendment to this. Staff's recommendation is that this be considered, all of this be considered as part of the 2020 budget process, and that's only 2 council meetings away. So I think that the conversation can be more fulsome at that point, and we're not talking about one-off projects, because at that point, each of us are elected to bring forward our community needs. And while Councillor Ritchie is sitting here, for sure, that rink is arguably, I mean, Midhurst isn't up and running yet, but it is one of our most well-used, in my opinion. And we can't sit here and debate what our next projects are gonna be. We have diamonds that are moving forward. We have a lot of recreation projects that are moving forward. And we also don't have a recommendation from our Recreation Advisory Committee attached to this. So I feel that we need to go through our advisory committees into the budget process and take this process as it's laid out before us this evening. So I will not be supporting an amendment to the motion.
Okay, any other comments? I too feel that, you know, we've got a process here. There have been presentations, we have been listening to them, but to consolidate it all at the time of the budget, to give us time as councillors to express what the interests are in the different communities that we've heard in a constructive, intelligent fashion, rather than to try to pick individual projects to accelerate the acceptance or rejection of those. It just makes sense to take a look at a total budget picture in another 2 to 4 weeks to make a more informed, intelligent decision with respect to the cloth from which we can cut our coat. So, CAO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just to maybe provide, hopefully for some clarity, is in the amended motion, not knowing what, excuse me if it was stated, not knowing what type of surface treatment is being proposed for Floss 10. If it was asphalt, we may be in a position where we don't have enough funds to set aside for the Phelpston roof, if you will. Because if my understanding, and I stand to be corrected, I think the last estimate was around $500,000 to do Floss Road 10 full asphalt. And that might be, yeah. So that means there's only about $80,000 left in the gas tax to go towards Phelpston,
So that reiterates my point, is we have to be fully informed of the facts of each option, not take a guess at them. Councillor Cabral?
Thank you. I'm separating these two. All of this stuff here that's currently on here, I'm happy to have that move towards budget deliberations. I see the one-time off gas tax fund as a complete separate entity. And the other thing I'd like to point out is the motion does specify 2019-26 as the Public Works project. And at that time, the estimate was $236,000. So I think asphalt was what Mr. Spring had asked for. That's not what this actually is targeting. So I feel fairly confident that it will be able to accommodate both Floss Road 10 West as well as Councillor Ritchie's motion as well. And I'd like to call the motion.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you. However, through you to Clerk Chaperone, if a member of council calls the motion, do I still have the opportunity to speak?
Thank you. It is up to the chair. The procedure bylaw states that each member can have up to 10 minutes to debate. So if the chair is satisfied that that has been exhausted, then he may honor the calling of the vote or continue debate if feels it has not.
No, I'd like, just on that last point that Councillor Cabral made, the motion as it reads says, for the completion of the, quote, gravel conversion to hardtop. So I don't know what that involves technically or in cost. So Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Marilyn. And further to that, that was my point. And in Councillor Cabral's direction to staff, there was 2 assumptions, and I don't believe that this council makes decisions versus on assumptions. If we have residents who are assuming it's going to be one thing and who are here adamantly requesting it to be one thing, there's no staff report telling us or outlining to us the exact costs of this job for us to vote on. So while the initiative in itself can be forwarded to the budget process, at this time, there's no numbers in front of me to vote on. So I'm not going to make a decision based on an assumption. So I will not be supporting it.
Councillor Hanna?
Thank you. It would help me if I knew what it was in the 10-year capital plan that was rescinded, what was planned in that 10-year. It would help me tonight to make the decision if somebody could tell me.
CAO Schmidt, can you,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to members of council. So I believe the motion is, as Councilor Capel mentioned, Project 2019-26, and my apologies, from the 6-year capital plan, which had a price tag of approximately $236,500. And I believe this treatment, if I'm reading this correctly, was for double surface treatment. According to-
Director Coleman, do you have any confirmation or any additional information with respect to that particular point?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I believe that may have been the previous director's thoughts that they were double surface treatment. However, in 2019 dollars, about 236,000 would, for that length of road, would probably only get a single surface treatment, but obviously that would have to go out to tender and be bid on.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Marilyn, and through you. So is that the entirety of the portion that has been requested by the numerous residents? Does that extend from driveway to driveway, or what portion, how many kilometers are we talking? Are we talking single, are we talking double, are we talking chip and tar? It's difficult to vote on a job or money being allocated towards it if I don't understand and there's no staff report in front of me.
Is CAO Schmidt, do you have your hand up there? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just, again, referring back to the 6-year capital plan, it does state 6.4 kilometers would be the distance.
So what does that represent of Floss Road 4 West? 10, sorry, 10. 10. Is that all of it? Yes, Councillor Cabral.
The only section that would remain would be the stretch from Highway 93 to Scarlet Line on the other side, and that's maybe a couple of kilometers, but that's not what this motion is in respect of.
Okay. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Two things. So I like that, sorry, I got my train of thought. Sorry, I'm going to have to, you can get back to me.
CAO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, for clarity, the project was titled Floss Road 10 West, County Road 27 to County Road 29. So the Director of Public Works has confirmed that it would be that stretch. That's the 6.4 kilometers that we're talking about.
Okay, yes, Councillor Moore, quick.
Thank you,
before
Mayor
forget.
Allen. Thank you. I wanted to say that I do support Councillor Cabral's position in that it should be treated separately from the budget, because I feel it's separate money that we didn't have during the last budget. They should be treated separately. Maybe we could bring it forward after we have the agricultural forum, that we don't necessarily have to vote tonight to do the project or not do the project, but keep it separate, that we don't push it into the budget either. Our last meeting that we had, I had brought something forward about the position that we hired or had approved, and had said, why are we doing this now when we could wait for the budget? And that was shot down because that was too far out into the future. So I feel like we're saying two things. I would like to keep them separate if I could, and just treat it at our normal council meetings. I'd like it to come up separate. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Maud Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I also agree with Councillor Moore, keeping that separate, but I would also like to know exactly what we're doing on Floss Road 10 and the exact cost it would be. So the staff report would be handy to make my decision.
CAO Schmidt, with respect to something separate, but I'm just thinking about all of the different moving parts that we have to consider. With respect to the hasty tracks and the hopeful consummation of that deal at a somewhat increased price yet to be finalized and determined, those monies potentially would come from where?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So you may recall that there was an appraisal done back in 2016, and then a revised appraisal was done in May of this year, which essentially, to my knowledge, the appraised value essentially increased to, the overall aggregate was about $1 million, $1.5 million increase. And so to your point, these dollars, additional gas tax dollars, again, could be allotted towards that project. If it's not, then obviously we're in a position where we're trying to obtain funding through the application that that was on the agenda tonight. So if we're not successful with that funding, then we would probably look to debt and or go back to our development community and seek some type of agreement with them, if you will. Push comes to shove, property taxes.
But that could be up to $1.5 million.
I believe that's the high end. Obviously, we're going to try to negotiate as much as we can and take into consideration the due diligence that we've already put into this property. So I wouldn't be suggesting that, but that is the high end based on the appraisals.
Okay. So, I am not opposed to these. I just do not want to make a decision without knowing numbers in support of this motion, without knowing numbers and without knowing a total picture. So I won't be able to support this motion. All right, any other comments before we go to vote? Can you reread the motion, please? Yes, Councillor Cabral.
I apologize, Mayor Allen. I was just curious if Councillor Moore might be able to elaborate a little bit more on what her proposal was with regards to my motion.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Well, I would propose then to keep the motion on the table until we do have more information. I'm not opposed to the motion, except that I don't have enough information right now. So I would propose that we bring it forward next regular council meeting, not necessarily a budget meeting, to review once we have all the information.
CAO Schmidt, would that be, what more information would be available at a next council meeting with respect to this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, again, if the direction is that council wishes staff to investigate detailed costing for Floss Road 10 West, then we can do that. I'm looking to our Director of Public Works to see if we have the time frame between now and then to come up with that costing. So assuming that we can, then we could bring a report forward on the November 6th council agenda for council's consideration.
Clerk Chaparral?
Thank you. And procedurally, as this is not a standalone motion, it's an amendment. An amendment cannot be referred or deferred, as there is not, it's not standing on its own. What would happen in that case, if that would be what council wishes, this motion could be either withdrawn, voted down, or voted for it, if council wishes. And then an item for future consideration requesting this detailed costing can be brought forward later on in the meeting with all of the information that council seeks to receive from staff.
Deputy Mayor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, and through you to Clerk Chaperone. As an alternative, should this amendment to the main motion be withdrawn, council would have an opportunity to refer the existing motion with a second amendment requesting this information to come forward at our November 6th meeting, so that it's not a separate item for future consideration. We're dealing with it with this item attached.
Clerk Chaparral, that's, yes. So, Councillor Cabral and Councillor Ritchie.
Well, it seems that I'm continually being put in the position sometimes where putting something off and putting something off. I guess what I'd be looking for is if this quote came under, would everybody be satisfied in it? That's what it seems to be. The initial number from 2019, or 2018, I'm sorry, was $236,000. The maximum number, if I recall correctly, was for asphalt in the neighborhood of $500,000. And I notice here on the budget from the 6-year capital plan that where asphalt is being used, it's alluded to in there, and the notation is attached to it. So I'm under the the impression that 2019, 26 would be a different, it wouldn't be asphalt that they were quoting here. It would be whatever, single treatment or double treatment. That's not asphalt, I don't think. So my concern is I'd like to see this happen. And I think Councillor Perry, not speaking for him, I think he'd like to see the motion go forward as far as trying to get that roof and some money put in there for it. So I need a moment to think, if you don't mind.
Okay. Okay, let's have a 5-minute bio break then now, please.
So what I'm hearing then is if we move it over till November the 6th, Mayor Allen?
Excuse me, we're just taking a bio break. If you want to have a discussion, we can have it offline.
You asked for the break.
back in line?
Appreciate that.
So where are we at? Councillor Cabral, did you want to say something?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Allen. I withdraw my motion.
Okay. So we are back to
And I have another motion.
another amendment to that motion?
Yes. And Renee, the clerk has it.
Clerk Chaparral?
Thank you. Through you, the amendment reads that the entire motion be referred back to staff in order that staff provide a detailed costing based on project 2019-26 as originally planned to be presented to council at the November 6, 2019 regular council meeting for consideration.
So this is just dealing with the Floss 10 West then?
We'll end up bringing everything back up.
Okay, and this is still seconded by Councillor Ritchie? Yes. Deputy Mayor Coghlan?
Thank you. My hand up was to second it, but also thank you to Councillor Cabral for appeasing council this evening with that request.
Any other questions or discussions with respect to this? Councillor Ma Chapman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Does that mean that the second half of Councillor Ritchie's is withdrawn also?
I'm at clerk's mercy here, just withdraw the whole thing.
Yeah, how are we dealing, Clerk Chaparral, with the Councillor Ritchie matter?
Thank you. As the amendment was one amendment, the withdrew the entirety of the amendment as it was presented by Councillor Cabral.
Okay, so for Councillor Ritchie to further progress his interest with respect to the previous amended motion, that would be through what? Items of future consideration or through submitting it to CAO Schmidt?
There are multiple ways. It may be submitted to the CAO as any other project as outlined earlier. It may be an amendment. It may be a notice of motion. There are several ways that it could come back on the table.
So we're clear on that?
No, I don't want it to go back to the staff. I'd like to either we withdraw it tonight and bring it back November 6th, or we vote on my portion right now.
Okay, so that wasn't added to this then? Deputy Mayor Coghlan.
Thank you, Marilyn, and through you, just my 2 cents this evening. Council has already voted to remove the Phelpston roof as part of the discussion this evening, so that's no longer on the table or before this council this evening.
I didn't vote to have it removed.
Yes.
I withdrew my motion, so it's not
So,
on the table.
sorry, you're correct. It's been removed. It's no longer as for discussion. I do believe that CAO Schmidt brought forward this evening that it is part of the capital plan, so we can discuss it at budget. It can be brought forward as a notice of motion this evening to be considered as part of the November 6th meeting. If you want council to talk to it next meeting, it would be required for you to bring forward a notice of motion this evening. And all you'd have to say is, during that portion of the meeting, I'd like to speak to the Phelpston roof, and we can do that at our next meeting as well.
I don't remember we're pulling the motion off. It was an amendment to begin with, and he pulled his portion, and you just asked, you just asked yourself, Mayor, is this the whole thing? I said either we split it up or we vote on my portion. I've got a total cost. We're waiting for him to get a total cost. We could go forward and vote on mine right now. Clerk Renee?
Clerk Chaparral?
Thank you. As we have another motion for a referral on the table, that has to be dealt
Yeah,
with.
we'll deal with that.
It can be withdrawn by Councillor Cabral, and then another amendment can be proposed, or as mentioned, it can be issued as a notice of motion. The reason it was taken off of the table is because it was included as part of the original amendment by Councillor Cabral, so it was treated as one motion versus two separate motions.
So, so we're dealing with this amendment because of the withdrawal. If you want to bring forward a notice of motion, once we get to that area.
Later on in the agenda,
Okay, all right, that's fine.
so,
Pertaining to this?
pertaining to the gas tax. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, so any further discussion with respect to this before we vote? Yes, Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I'm sorry for doing this again, but is there a way that we might be able to amend my motion right there to refer it back to include that? That's my question to the clerk.
Clerk Chaparral?
It is your motion, so whatever you would like to add to it.
Would you add that little bit from the first one to it so that both of them can go to November the 6th and be dealt with at the same time? I think that would be expedite matters for this evening.
Councillor Ma Chapman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just for the Phelps roof, I totally understand that they need a roof, but what I don't understand is why it should be paid through the township when all the other pavilions raised most of their money through fundraising.
Okay, well, we will, that discussion will happen once, if this amendment goes through at the next meeting, so. Deputy Mayor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. And also, I just, through you to Clerk Chaperone, the report that is to council and has been made public to our residents, nowhere in that does it state anything about the Phelpston rink. So our Recreation Advisory Committee, nor has the Recreation Committee of the Phelpston community been involved in that. And I feel that this is not germane to the motion. I feel that it is different from, I mean, paving a road and building a pavilion are not the same thing to me, and to just bring them together as a motion in the same germane, I'm just questioning whether procedurally we as a council are able to just throw that on the agenda. In my opinion, Councillor Ritchie has brought this to council's attention. It should come forward as a notice of motion. It should be brought forward at the next one to be voted on as council, and then a subsequent staff report to suggest funding allocations and that moving forward. I don't see how this is procedurally correct as part of this motion.
Clerk Chaparral?
Thank you. Through you, if something is to be deemed germane to the motion, is the call of the chair. It is up to interpretation and the final call of the chair on whether something is germane to the motion.
All right, with respect to this, then I'm going to make the call that these be split up. We're going to deal with the amendment that Councillor Cabral put forward, and if Councillor Ritchie wants to put forward a notice of motion, which he indicated he did, then he can talk to that at that point in time. Okay, so we're clear on this amendment? All those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? Carried. So we're at 12. Can I get a mover and a seconder to get the reports, information reports on the table? Deputy Mayor Coghlan, Councillor Cabral. Are there any items that, of this 1 through 8, that we want to discuss? Councillor Cabral?
Just a comment on item number 1.
Any other items to be commented on, questioned? Okay, Councillor Cabral, go ahead, item 1.
I just wanted to compliment the IT coordinator, Michael Burney. He did a very good job. I did have a number of questions, and he was very good at satisfying those questions for me and provided me with additional information so that I certainly had more clarity on the way things sometimes work when you're dealing with provincial buyers and sellers. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, so the report Items listed herein be received as information. Number 1, wireless communications plan. Number 2, fire department monthly report, September 2019. Number 3, minor variance application 17-19, Woods, Re 6 Kerr Street. Number 4, minor variance application A18/19 Barron, 1725 County Road 92. Number 5, minor variance application A19/19 Bates, Re 14 Plowright Road. Number 6, minor variance application A20/19 Harrison, Re 37 Hillview Crescent. Number 7, minor variance application A21/19 Reynolds, roll number 434103000601301300. And number 8, boundary adjustment application B12/19 Trahan regarding 78 Mill Street East. All those in favor? Carried. Moving on to verbal updates. Director Spagnell, any update on the official plan or economic development update?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Allen. One update on the official plan review is that staff is scheduling for the Section 26 public meeting with respect to the official plan review to take place on December 5th. That's a Thursday. Public notice will be mailed out, will be provided through the Springwater link, along with individual emails to requesters who have asked to be notified of that public meeting. In addition to that, from an economic development perspective, the mayor's business breakfast is scheduled to occur on October 24th, and that will be up at Elmvale Arena, starting at 7:30 a.m. At that event, staff will be providing a presentation on development taking place in the municipality. We'll be providing an overview of the community improvement plan, and also we'll be providing an overview of the business directory that will be accessible for any business owners to try and maybe input some of their information. That is all I have to report at this point in time.
Thank you. Councillor Ritchie?
Mayor Allen, in regards to the official plan, I thought about a motion there that we stop with this until the regional review was up.
Yes, that motion did come forward.
And it was passed, was it not?
No, it wasn't passed. It was
Okay.
defeated.
We lost.
Okay, county and regional government review updates. Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Recently, at our most recent county council meeting, we have approved the Simcoe Muskoka YMCA Youth Transitional Housing Ask, which is very exciting. And since our last meeting, I also accepted an invitation extended by the warden to attend the gala, to which the warden's gala raised $55,000 for Simcoe Muskoka United Way. So it was a successful event and was happy to attend on behalf of Springwater.
Thank you. Municipal updates. Any municipal updates? Councillor Cabral?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just wanted to comment on the Fall Fair in Elmvale. It was a bit blustery that day, but it was very, very nice. A great turnout. I was out on the Friday to see the school kids from all the local area schools parade in, and it was quite something else to see them. They were laughing and dancing. There was a few floats in the parade as well, too. Some of them were quite nice. And, of course, on Saturday, council was represented in the parade. Mayor Allen was there, Mayor Mao Chapman, and the mayor, sorry, gave you a raise there. Councillor Mao Chapman and Councillor Moore and myself. It was very, very much fun. And later on at the, I'm sorry? Oh, I apologize. Yes. Deputy Mayor Coughlin was there. I'm really sorry about that. I was starting to think about who was in the arena later on, but MP Doug Downey was there, said a few words, and the mayor and myself were up on stage, and he brought greetings from the township. So I do apologize to Deputy Mayor Coughlin for missing her, but it was a good day, and it was a good night too, because I could hear everything going on at my place, and I live about 5 kilometers away. But it was pretty good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ritchie?
Mayor Allen, I'd like to speak about the fair as well too. On Friday, watching all the school kids the number of schools, there was only one school in all of Springwater that didn't participate. And but before I mention that, I just want to mention there was both Elmville schools. There was Minisink, there was Hillsdale, there was St. T's, there was Wyvale, and later on that night when I was doing booth duty with some of our staff, and they did a great job. One of the staff members mentioned about reaching out to the school in Midhurst about coming up and participating. And that would include all our schools in Springwater. And it was just a great day, but the weather had a lot to do with it. It was warm, sunny, and come on up to Elmville. We'll look after you. We'll take all your money. So that's all I have to say.
Councillor Ritchie, did you want to comment on Hillsdale Music Bingo?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. The music bingo, I had never been to it. My wife and I went, and we had a great meal. It's a great event. If you love the old tunes, come on up. There was people up dancing beside their chair. It was a great evening, and I think they sold over the 100 tickets. And there was a cash bar if you had a dry tongue. And it was a good evening had by all. Thank you.
Councillor Ma Chapman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just updated at Mills, they are having a movie night, game night every, last Friday of every month. Started in September, and I'm pretty sure they had a good turnout. And they're looking for any games that you want to donate to them. Also, they're having their Halloween party on Sunday, October the 27th, between 1 and 4. And both Aunt Mills and Minisink are in the midst of planning their tree lighting. More to follow at the next council meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just an update from the library board that they are recruiting a board member, so they're actively advertising. So if you know anybody who might be interested in joining the board, that would be great. I also wanted to ask about the Save Station training.
Just on the library, they have an event this weekend, do they not? Saturday night?
This weekend?
Yes, the community reads. All about
Oh, that's true. Sorry. What do they don't call it community reads. Jordan Bay Reads, yeah. So that's this weekend in Elmville. I don't know a lot about it, so I can't really speak to
Okay,
it.
go ahead.
But I would like to ask about the Save Station training. I haven't heard what's being organized about that, and I'd like to make sure that the residents in my area have an opportunity to do that.
CAO Schmidt, you can please comment on that, what's happened and what is going to happen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe our communications officer is having discussions with our representative from the Save Station, or Action First Aid. And so those, I think they're planning a dozen or so, if not more, sessions. So the dates I don't think have been confirmed as of yet, but there will be something coming out very shortly.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Coghlan?
Yes, and thank you, Marilyn. And I thoroughly enjoy going into our local schools and speaking to classes about civics. And on Friday, I've been invited by Huronia to present to approximately 50 kids about what it means to be involved in municipal politics and how that falls into everything that we do locally. So looking forward to that, and just wanted to thank staff for this swag that I get to bring in tow, because bribing the kids to be involved definitely makes it a little bit more enjoyable.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to 14.1, notice of motion presented by Deputy Mayor Coghlan at the October 2nd, 2019 regular meeting regarding the MVCA levy. We need a seconder for that. Councillor Cabral. Okay, I'll turn it over to you, Deputy Mayor Coghlan.
I thought you read the motions. It's a long one.
Okay, I'll read the
I'm
motion.
teasing.
I'll read the motion first, just to remind people. Whereas the Township of Springwater supports the objects of balance on conservation, environmental stewardship, and sustainability to anchor its operations, planning, services, and strategic vision. And whereas the Township of Springwater understands the need for both the province and its municipalities to deliver clear, costed, and sustainable programs and services for taxpayers, and whereas both tiers of government must assess all programs and services to eliminate duplication and balance costs on tests of affordability, health, safety, and environmental stewardship. And whereas the Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks signaled on August 16, 2019 of a need for conservation authorities to refocus their operations related to core mandates as currently defined in the Conservation Authorities Act and its prescribed regulations. And whereas the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks signaled on August 16, 2019 that conservation authorities should not proceed with any increases to fees or levies. Therefore, be it resolved that the Township of Springwater supports any provincial effort to require its municipal levy only apply to core mandated programs and services, and that this resolution be forwarded to Premier Doug Ford, the Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks, the Honourable Jeff Urich, the Simcoe County and all of the Simcoe County municipalities, the MVCA, and Ontario's other 35 conservation authorities, and Conservation Ontario, signaling the townships of Springwater support of the province's review, consultations, and development of an updated Conservation Authorities Act and the willingness to participate in all consultations and submissions to the same. Deputy Mayor Coghlan.
Thank you, Mayor Allen, and through you to council and staff, members of the public. I first want to thank staff and members of council for working with me to ensure that this was as concise and direct as of a message that we wanted to send. I believe that often communication is only sent when you're in disagreement with something that's happened, and I think that the province and through that Minister Urich is taking the initiative to make changes that we have been asking for at our local level, and I am thoroughly excited to put this at our table tonight, and I hope that council will consider and will approve this to be submitted.
To this, Councillor Hanna.
Thank you, Mayor. Every time this comes up at our budget, we always have questions about the NVCA and the costing to Springwater Township. So I see this as a opportunity for us as council in Springwater Township to be more fiscal responsibility by asking for more information, if you like, and by supporting what the province has put forward. So I'll support this motion with the understanding that when budget time comes forward, we always get deputations from some of the people we contract with, in particular NVCA, and at that time, if they come forward with something that justifies an increase in what we are charged and paid for, then I would consider making changes. But at this time, I support the objectives of this motion to generate fiscal responsibility.
Thank you. Other comments, questions, discussion? Councillor Ritchie?
Mayor Allen, I see there's another motion there below it, so are you gonna read that too, or is that separately, or is?
It is
we
a separate,
choose?
it is a separate motion, so we need to deal with them individually. They were purposely split in two, but you no doubt have read them both, so one's related to the other. I'll let Deputy Mayor Coghlan explain the other one after we deal with this one. Follow on?
Yes. I see the chair of the MVCA, Mr. Hevner, replied to Deputy Coghlan's. So did he reply to this first one, or did he reply to the second one, or both?
I believe the reply contemplated both of them. It referenced both of them in the letter. Deputy Mayor Coghlan, do you have further comment on that?
Thank you, Marilyn, and through you, for clarification, the original draft motion was lengthy, as there's a lot to be said, and it was felt that in order for our point from this council, there's two separate things. Not only do we as a council support the direction of the province to work with our CAs to establish what's going to be moving forward in the Conservation Authorities Act, is separate from what we have been asking as a council from the NVCA in my existence sitting here for 5 years. So they were very separate in that, and it was my fear that I didn't want one to not move forward without the other. So they've been presented as separate motions for council. And the letter that was received, I will be speaking in depth to on the next motion, if that suits Councillor Ritchie.
Councillor Ritchie?
So is one of these, is the one going to the government to tell them our views on this? And the other one's going to the MVCA, or like, how, what's the?
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, and through you to Councillor Ritchie. The last paragraph of both motions is the same. I have asked through this motion that our council supports Premier Doug Ford, the environments of Minister Urick, the County of Simcoe, the 35 other conservation authorities, Conservation and Conservation Ontario, all be notified of the direction of this council.
A follow-on?
Well, I have concerns about the first one and the second one, but maybe I'll save that and I'll plug my 2 cents worth in after you're done speaking on the second. I have concerns about both.
Well, they were split up and we're about to vote on the first one, so can you comment on your concerns of the first one?
At least this has gotten the attention of the MVCA, which is good. But there's 2 things that I have a concern with. One, it should be mentioned that they do this in their watershed and get out of other watersheds, which is what they're doing. That's one. Secondly, and the biggest one, is we need, and this is where this should be highlighted with the government, and the government knows this as well too, that there needs to be a sunset clause put in here, so that when your memorandum of understanding expires, you're done. And you don't renew it until they come to their senses, or you reach an agreement. The way it is now is there's no exit clause. Okay? There's none. When this thing was signed, if you took this and went to a lawyer and you try fighting them, you'll find there's no exit clause. That's why Tate Township, Tiny Township, the town of Orillia never entered into these agreements. Our present MP, who sat as a councillor for the town of Orillia, who was a solicitor, you know, he brought that to council. He goes, why would we enter into an agreement when there's no exit clause? There's no, and that needs to be brought forward. That would give us some teeth to negotiate, and it would balance the playing field a lot more level. That's the problem that I have with these, either one of them is telling you. And we need that moving forward with these memorandum of understandings. That last memorandum of understanding wasn't worth the paper it was written on. And I'll tell you that right now, and I'll speak to that later on when we bring other items up. But that's the 2 things that needs to be here, because getting back to other watersheds, they're over in other watersheds. They want to create an empire, these guys, and they need to be brought back to reality. And that's the reason for this conservation review. And the government knows that, and they need to hear that from us, especially us, because we're paying for we're paying for the MVCA and we're paying for the Severn Sound. Severn Sound does their job. Like half of them probably go to the food bank for what they make and for what they charge us, and they do a very good job. These guys, they're the ones that needs to be brought into line. That's my concern.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, and Councillor Ritchie. Your concerns are echoed in both of these motions brought forward tonight.
I don't see any of that in there.
You will see, it says, whereas the Minister of Conservation, Parks and Authority signaled on August 16th the need for authorities to refocus their operations related to their core mandates originally or currently defined in the Conservation Authority Act. So this motion is saying we support the minister's direction to have the authorities brought back to their original and core mandate. Secondly, through research with staff and other parties, there is an exit clause, and I believe it was 13.1 of the Conservation Authorities Act that stated that if 2 member municipalities come forward, they can initiate an exit clause. At this point, we're not asking to exit. We're simply asking for answers, and I think that we need to provide RCA with the opportunity to provide us with those answers before we make that move. So we're not suggesting that we want to dissolve our relationship with the NVCA. What we are suggesting is that we've been asking questions for 5 years and we have not got our answers, and enough is enough. So these 2 motions have been separated this evening. The first one is a letter in support of the minister and the province's direction, and the second one is a simple request with 5 bullet points of questions to the NVCA. So they're separated so that we, as a council, can support them individually.
Comments over here? Nope. Okay, are we ready then to go to the vote? All those in favor of the first motion? Opposed? Carried. Okay, the next motion. We need a seconder on the next motion. Councillor Moore. Whereas the Township of Springwater, like all municipalities in Ontario, must confront fiscal limitations and reevaluate programs, services, and the financial sustainability of each. And whereas the Township of Springwater is a constituent municipality in portions of the watershed under the jurisdiction of the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority and is compelled to remit non-negotiable levy funding to the authority on an annual basis. And whereas the Township of Springwater cannot exercise line item scrutiny of the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority's budget and operations, nor does the authority itself provide detailed substantiation of the same to its member municipalities like the Township of Springwater. And whereas the Township of Springwater must account for all taxpayers' funds it expends within its operations and that it forwards to local agencies and boards, therefore be it resolved that the Township of Springwater requests that the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority provide, prior to passage of its 2020 budget, the following. Number one, its interpretation and understanding of its mandated operations as found in the current Conservation Authorities Act 1990 RSO 1990 C27 and its prescribed regulations. Number two, the costs of each as determined under subsection 1 above. Number three, detailed definitions and determinations of what can be characterized as non-mandatory programming and services. Number four, the costs of each as determined under number 3, previously mentioned above. Number 5, detailed definitions and determinations of fee-for-service activities of the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority, the revenues they generate as the activities take place within and or requests originate from geographic area of the Township of Springwater. And number 6, the costs that arise from programs and services enabled through the Memorandum of Understanding with Severn Sound Environmental Association, and this resolution be circulated to Premier Doug Ford, the Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks, the Honourable Jeff Urich, the County of Simcoe and all Ontario municipalities, the MVCA and Ontario's other 35 conservation authorities, and Conservation Ontario. Deputy Mayor Coghlan, maybe you could expand on this?
Thank you, Marilyn. And first off, after rereading this a million times over the last week, may it be noted that number 6, the second "the" should read "that." It says the cost "the" arise. It should be the cost "that" arise. You read it properly, and it reads improperly. So thank you, Marilyn, for the opportunity to speak to this. In conjunction with this and the letter that we as a council received from the NVCA, while I understand that transition takes time and the NVCA is asking for 18 to 24 months to potentially create changes in the future and moving forward, I hope that the intent of this motion is received by the NVCA is we're not asking questions about what's happening in their 2021 budget. We want a breakdown of the 2020 budget, and we have been asking for this breakdown for years on end. It will note in the letter that while I agree with their statement on page 2, paragraph 5, that states, let me assure you the NVCA delivers programs and services that your municipalities value. I would like it to be noted, and with all due respect, let me assure you that our residents have been asking us for years for us to be able to explain to them the scope of the NVCA's jurisdiction, the programs that are core and not core, and how the budget and the levy is facilitated. And I'm not able to provide our residents with that answer, and I am not going to put a blindfold on and raise my hand to approve a levy that I personally don't understand. So we as a council, I'm hoping that we as a council, and as it's not a resolution of council yet, that these are 6 questions, and as Councillor Hannah stated earlier, we hold our other service partners to these same 6 tests. We want to know how and why you're spending your money, and we're not suggesting that we're micromanaging, but we owe that to our residents, and I really hope that council is able to unanimously support this evening, and we will therefore, at our budget delegation, have the MVCA sitting in front of us with answers to these 6 questions.
Okay, thank you. If I may, I sit on the board of the MVCA, and as was mentioned in the letter from the MVCA dated October 16, 2019, signed by CAO Doug Hevner, who's in the audience here, the budget is on the website as being part of the agenda for the MVCA, for the board meeting that did review it before it went out to municipalities. It has gone out to municipalities. It's being reviewed and incorporated as part of the respective municipalities' budget process. Attached to that budget are departmental build-ups with revenues and expenses. So that's the degree of detail that exists for anybody to take a look at it. And but what it has not done and does not do is look at, take any attempt to look at the services to say which are core and which potentially aren't core. And I think that's what this motion is driving at, to try to get a different and a new perspective that that would reflect that. And the way I interpret the letter dated October 16th from CAO Hevner is that we're working on it, be patient, it's going to take up to 2 years for that, once the government comes out with regulations, to be able to determine. And I guess the question is, do councillors agree with that, or can there be some sort of attempt to work towards that in the interim? Is that described? Deputy Mayor Coughlin, what's your...
Thank you, Mayor Allen. And yes, while I understand what you're saying is what the NVCA and other CAs are working towards with the province, however, to me, the questions originally arose when I learned that we had an SSEA and an NVCA, and we requested a memorandum of understanding between the two. The NVCA suggests that they provide service to 100% of our municipality. We have the SSEA who provides service within their watershed, and they overlap. So there was an identified memorandum of understanding, and in this letter, it says that the costs associated were nominal. Nominal is not a number that I can work with. I need to know exactly what those costs are, and even after the services were identified, there was no cost savings to the municipality. So rather than one person doing 100% and there's an overlap, we had 2 people providing us with a service, one backed off, but there was no cost savings. So that is number 6, and there's no information to that. If the NVCA decides that everything that they do is a core or mandated service within the Conservation Authority Act dictated in 1990, then yes, 100% of their service would be. But to me, there's programs and services that are offered to residents that are not, and it is our job to fully understand the scope of the service that's being provided to us. And it doesn't need to be, I would like it to be concise and 100% accurate, whereas I do not have the capability, even though I've tried, to look through their budget and determine, okay, well, is XYZ a core or mandated responsibility? I don't have that ability, so all I'm asking is for the NVCA to come forward to us and say, take a highlighter and say, these are the ones that are core services as directed through the Constitution in 1990. So that is all that this is asking for at this point.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I agree that I'd like to see something more detailed from the NVCA. Certainly campaigning and conversations, people don't have a clear understanding of the core mandated services that they're supposed to provide. And often there's innuendo about overreaching. So I'd really like to see that spelled out a bit better. But I wonder, Deputy Mayor, if you could speak to the letter we received, because chances are most people don't know that we received the letter from the Honourable Jeff Urick about the asks for this year. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
And thank you, through you, Mayor Allen and Councillor Moore. So at our last meeting of council, CAO Schmidt did speak to a letter, and I believe it was dated August 16th, brought forward by the Minister Urick, who in that letter, and I am paraphrasing, stated that no new programs or increase to levy, and I'm just going to ask, I assume that Director Schmidt is, or sorry, CAO Schmidt now is pulling that up for us so that I'm not misquoted, but in that letter, it was clear that the minister had suggested or was signaling to the NVCA or the CAs across Ontario not to come forward with any levy increase or program changes or increases, and yet, from what I understand and what we've been told, our NVCA is coming forward with a 3% increase. So, to me, it's like we have been asking questions for years, and they're not being answered from the lower tier governments to our CAs. And now it's not a ministerial order, but there is a signal from Minister Urick not to have program increases and not to have a budget increase, and it's still coming forward at 3%. So I'm sitting here very confused as to why we're being asked of this and how we as a municipality can we have through resolution, and thank you for that, support to the minister, and this one is simply stating to the NVCA, these are the questions we've had. You're not listening to the minister and you're not listening to us. How can you expect us to make decisions based on that?
Thank you. Just some updated facts with respect to the budget. The increase that was approved by the majority of the board was 3%, which represented 75,000. Staff at NVCA worked hard to bring that in under that at 2.7%, which represents $66,028 over the levy this is all of the municipalities. The Springwater levy portion is increasing is proposed to increase $6,427 to $188,420, which is 3.5% increase. And the reason the difference in the percent is because of the current value assessment apportionment changes, which factor into the increase. And the Springwater capital asset levy, which is the second component, is increasing from $9,600 to $11,076, which is a 15.4% increase. So, as proposed, it's $188,420 for the levy and $11,076 for the capital. Councillor Ritchie?
Mayor Allen, those numbers aren't right because there's something here that we're missing, and I brought that up last year at budget when they were here, the MVCA, and that's the fees that they pay the building department when they go to do something in the township. And that total cost of fees could highlight as high as $30,000 or more. And when I asked that to them last year when they were here, it's in line, whatever it is, and it was the overall of the watershed. I don't care, and I don't know what the other municipalities do. That's none of my business, but it is my business to know what Springwater is, and I wanted to know that, and I never did get a direct answer, and I never have gotten a direct answer on that. So if you're $188,000, add another 30 or 40 to that we're paying them a year, and they failed to bring that to your attention.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Coughlin, thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn, and through you to Councillor Ritchie. You'll note that number 5 is actually a detailed definition and determination of the fee for service, which our residents pay to the NVCA, and we want to know what that amount is of spring water. Like you said, not across Ontario or the entire NBCA watershed, specific to spring water. So that is captured in this moment that we're hoping, or in this motion that we're hoping to pass this evening.
Mayor Allen, I'm not disputing what the resolution is. I'm pointing out to you what's happening right now. Today, tomorrow, if I go to the counter and I say I want a building permit, they gotta say, well, you gotta go see the MVCA. So I go over to see the MVCA, and they pull out their maps that they govern, which we should have here, and we've paid for several times. And by the way, that's a $400 fee. Write the check. They sign off, you come back and see the director of building. Ask staff if I'm talking fumes here, but that's how it works. That number of money, amount of money, yeah, it shows up in 5, but I'm glad we're dealing with it now. But over the last number of years, we've been paying through the nose on that, and they failed to bring that to our attention at budget time.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other comments then? So we're all aware of the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Good discussion.
May I have the vote recorded, please, Marilyn?
Yes.
A recorded vote was requested by Deputy Mayor Coughlin. When I state your name, please state yes or no. Councillor Cabral?
Yes.
Councillor Hannah?
Yes.
Councillor Chapman?
Yes.
Councillor Moore?
Yes.
Councillor Ritchie?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Yes?
And Mayor Allen.
Yes.
That motion is carried.
Okay, moving on to other notices of motion. What is it? Okay, sorry, before you, there is a notice of motion that was moved by Councillor Ritchie, and with respect to the bringing back 9.5 on the agenda, given that we talked about that, Councillor Ritchie, will you withdraw that motion, given that we discussed it in the earlier action report?
Well, Mary Ellen, if I withdraw it, what happens then?
Well, let me remind you what it says. It's the staff bring back item 9.5 on the agenda, award of the microsurface and hot mix asphalt tenders from September 18, 2019. So what happens then is that that gets dealt with what we decided with respect to this action item earlier in the evening. It gets incorporated into the next meeting motion that we talked about, that Councillor Cabral presented and was passed. And so that deals with FLOS 10.
Mary Ellen, I'm a little confused here. I put that in there in order to address, I wanted it brought back to council. So we had talked about the gas tax, and this is what was put in here in the agenda.
Yes.
And I wanted to talk about the gas tax, about the amount of money, as to council should have a say in it. I brought a notice of motion forward regarding the Phelpston roof. There was a clear cost amount there as to what I'm asking for. Councillor Cabral, we decided to separate his because we're waiting for more information from staff.
So might I suggest then that you withdraw this one with respect to, that has been dealt with, and you were talking about proposing a notice of motion with respect to, you go ahead. So Clerk Chaperon is going to review that with you.
Mayor Allen, just from direction from the clerk, the recommendation be it resolved as Council Direct Public Works and its staff bring back item 9.5 on the agenda, microsurface hot mix asphalt tenders. I would like to withdraw that tonight. And in replace of that, I'd like a notice of motion, and I'd like to read it now.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Be it resolved that this council directs staff, finance department to set aside $75,000 for 2018, plus $75,000 for 2019, totaling $150,000, to be set aside to be used towards the construction of a new steel roof covering the Phelpson rink on or before the 4th year of this term of council.
Okay, so that's a notice of motion. We won't discuss that now, but it's recorded as a notice of motion, correct? Yes, that's correct. Okay, any other notices of motion? Councillor Ritchie?
I just wanted to go back to my notice of motion. I'm having,
Which one?
the notice of motion that I just read about the Phelpson roof.
Yes?
I want to be clear, I'm dealing with the gas tax. I'm not dealing with the budget. This is separate money. This was newfound money. And that's why I brought it forward in the beginning, so that everybody could have to speak about it. Councillor Hannah, all there's issues. So that, I want to be clear about that.
Yep,
I don't feel it should be part of the 2020 budget, and I want to be on the record for that. This
Okay.
is separate from that. It
Thank
should
you.
be kept like that.
Okay, all right, no other notices of motion, so we're moving on to item 15.1, items for future consideration. Any items, Councillor Hannah?
Thank you. I would just like to ask, with the budget coming forward, if we could ensure that we have a itemized list of all credit card expenditures for the past year, as well as all expense accounts, so we have open transparency, and we know going forward in the budget if we have an opportunity to make some savings or need to put more funds forward.
Okay, that's noted. Any? Are you posing that as as an item for future consideration, or just a comment?
Whichever works easy,
I think-
rather than take time to sit down at
Yeah.
night to, I believe long as.
Yeah, I think it's been noted. It's been noted. Thank you. Okay, no, Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Marilyn, and just as a follow-up to the delegation earlier this evening, I don't know if it would take staff or members of council to reach out to those involved, like Mrs. Harry's, and those involved in the water project, to inform our council as to what is happening in Elmville, and invite them to be part of a council meeting. That would be great.
Okay, the clerk is just crafting that as a item for future consideration. All right, we're going to handle that next item for future consideration. Bylaws. Okay, mover to seconder for the bylaws, please. Councillor Cabral, Deputy Mayor Coughlin, that the bylaws listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk, 5000-299, ZB 219-10, Reed Jr. All in favor? Carried. Bylaw to confirm and adopt proceedings, mover to seconder, please. Councillor Moore, Councillor Mont Chapman. That the bylaw 219-80 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at the regular council meeting held October 16, 219, listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? Carried. And adjournment. Councillor Ritchie and Councillor Cabell. That the regular meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 9:10 p.m. to meet again. Regular meeting, November 6, 6:30, council chambers at Min Center, Minnesota. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in.